everyone. I hope you are all well. It's sunny here at least. Right, so there's a lot to get through, so I will crack straight on. I wanted to start by covering FE. Those of you from the FEC will know that there is a tremendous amount of activity right now in FE, not least of all with the conclusion of the indicative ballots, but also a number of other local disputes which are covered in the report. Just want to note at the very beginning that we have submitted our formal pay claim along with the other unions calling for a 10% pay increase and on all points with a minimum uplift of £2,000. Negotiations with the AOC are commencing this month. Perhaps of more interest to NEC members is the results of the indicative ballot in FE, which was conducted in line with the strategy agreed by the FEC unanimously. The overall turnout for that indicative ballot was 27.5%. 16 branches achieved over 50% and 33 branches over 40%. 91% of those voting in support of industrial action. These results have been reviewed by the FEC that happened last week to decide next steps in the campaign. The aim really is to build the potential vote in those selected branches and to move forward in a way that will have more branches in the ballot, more branches in the dispute, and really start capacity building where we've been putting that work in and really getting FE to start paying off in terms of all of the work that's been going in. So I just wanted to say well done to all of the staff involved, all of the members of the FEC and its chair and vice chairs, and not least of all of the branch activists and reps that were involved. It's shaping up, I think, to be a really important and impressive dispute. There's a lot happening in Northern Ireland, not just in least of the negotiations there, which are covered in 2.5 and 2.6. This has been ongoing for quite some time. As you all know, the pay gap between FE lecturers and school teachers exists there, and we really want to close that further and establish a national agreement linking those sectors. The employers have yet to state their position and they've not made an offer yet. But there's also further down in the report a vast amount of information about other issues that are happening in Northern Ireland, which I will raise a little bit later. The next thing that I really want to talk about in a little bit of depth FE is what is happening at Richmond upon Thames College. You'll see in section 2.8 of the report, they are balloting for industrial action. We need to be really concerned, everybody, over what is happening at Richmond. There are plans to fire the entire teaching workforce and rehire them on worse terms. It's planning to sack 127 members. Making them reapply for their jobs on worse terms and conditions, and potentially losing 13 days of holiday. I don't need you to tell you this is fire and rehire. It has no place in any workplace. It certainly has no place in education. Obviously, we have called on the college to immediately withdraw this threat and change direction. But I think it's indicative of the type of managers that we are seeing across the sector. We know 3 years ago, Nottingham College, who deserve another congratulations because they've actually just made progress after the 3 years since their dispute on their pay claim. They overturned and defeated something not dissimilar to this 3 years ago. So UCU has been here before, has beaten this before, and the win at Nottingham College was so impressive. Not only were the management, I think, completely humiliated, but there were additional gains that the branch managed to make. It's worth reminding ourselves that they did that after 14 days of strike action and the branch unanimously calling 14 days more. They had widespread support in the city. I expect Richmond to be exactly the same. So I'm just taking some time now to flag this to everyone because they're going to need our support. They're going to need the support of the Fighting Fund. And obviously, much like we did with Nottingham, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at it. And I think, we had some interesting discussions in SFC about the extent to which it will be advantageous, I think, notwithstanding what's happening at Richmond, for the union to be linking up with sister unions in education and seeing if there's actually a national campaign that we could run around fire and rehire. And I'm very enthusiastic about that. And I think it would be good over the next coming months to really touch base with our sister union GSs and see about how we could, you know, establish something like that, whether or not there would be a charter we'd be asking employers to sign up to and what have you. So all quite embryonic at the minute, but I just wanted to kind of flag that that was a discussion that was had at the SFC last week that I thought was actually a really helpful suggestion. 2.7 is just outlining a number of the disputes that we have going on in the Northwest. Information that wasn't put in this report because I don't think I knew it at the time of writing is that the days of action, the first days of action in the Northwest are due to commence on the 18th of May. So solidarity to all of those up there, again, sending our support and watching what happens. So more good news, 2.9, the disciplinary process that had commenced against our branch secretary and the chair of South East Regional College has been abandoned, but we are not letting go of that claim yet until there is some compensation and agreement made for how we re-establish good, effective bargaining. And there's some information in 2.10 about what's happening at Oakland's College as well. So moving on to higher education, obviously for those who are on the HEC, they will know a lot of what is going to be reported already. Branches that have a mandate in the forfeits and USS disputes last took 5 days of action that was split over 2 weeks in March and April. Since then, you know, a lot of negotiation meetings have continued with regards to USS specifically about this dispute. There's been meetings with UCA regarding this year's pay claim. And 2.12 really, I think, summarizes where we are with USS. Frustratingly, you know, financial monitoring reports that have demonstrated and revealed precisely what UCU has been saying all along. The deficit has predictably shrunk, and the trustee has even confirmed that if a new valuation was conducted at this point, benefits could be increased or contributions reduced. There has been, I think, some movement among some vice-chancellors. We saw Anton Muscatelli, the vice-chancellor of Glasgow, put out a joint statement with the UCU branch there, which I commend the branch for. I think it was a very helpful statement, not just calling that for evaluation that will happen soon to happen, but also making commitments that employers should pay more, and that shouldn't necessarily have to be mirrored with members paying more, and that benefits could and should change following that valuation if that was the outcome. I think one of the things that I'm interested in is talking to those branches, and some of those conversations have happened about how we bring more vice-chancellors on board with that plan. So obviously negotiations and strike action happen, but I think there's a bigger picture that's happening too. Moving on to sort of 2.13, and 2.14, we had reballoting over 149 institutions to extend that strike mandate. 36 branches got over the threshold in forfeits and 24 in USS. We have had 2 separate SHESCs for both the forfeits and the USS. They happened at the end of last month. End of last month. And there's a HEC next week to address both sets of SHESC results, but also a meeting of branches which the SHESC motions that were passed called for to take place prior to that HEC. The main, I think, consequence of the branch meeting before the HEC will be really to feedback the many discussions that are being conducted in branches now that branches know what the SHESCs have produced. I'm passing on what is confidential information here, but the HE officers met earlier this week to confirm that we can proceed with a marking boycott, and you should expect further information about that later today. But as I say, treat anything that is being given in this report as strictly confidential right now. I've put something in 2.15 just to remind everyone of the incredibly sort of draconian requirements that the Trade Union Act places upon us. and that obviously there is strike notice that we have to give that's enshrined in law. But in order to make sure that our information is accurate, which is also required by law, there's certain tasks that simply can't be done until the decision to serve notice is given. So I know that it is slow. It is designed to be slow. The preparation has to be done at the time it has to be done. It cannot be done in advance, because we have to show that we're downloading that information on certain days. And obviously it has to be triple checked to ensure that we are not vulnerable to legal challenges. So I really do ask NEC members to pass that information on if they get asked questions about why things sometimes take longer than people would like. It's not a process we can rush, and it's not a process that we can do any more pre-preparation for than we do. In terms of the forfeits and the USS Shesks and outcomes, as I'm sure many people on NEC, I've had a lot of communications from members and branches recently, and I've really just outlined my thoughts on the matter in the report. I think it's clear that the union's members in HE are divided about how we best carry on in these disputes. That isn't to say that there wasn't clear outcomes from the Shesks. There was clearly motions that won, and there was clearly motions that lost, or were carried and lost rather. But I am concerned by the slim margins on either side. It's going to leave HEC, I think, with really difficult decisions to make. The feedback we're getting from branches is that it's obviously very difficult for branches having those conversations too, because there isn't really a significant majority support for particular options and routes forward. And I wanted to outline my concern about this, because I think if we contrast this to further education, where we are following a strategy that's been developed and implemented over a period of several months with absolute full support from the FEC, full support from the participating branches, this has led to a different, I think, not just different outcomes in terms of a large number and larger numbers than before, but it's laying significant foundations of agreement and consensus amongst people, and we don't have that in HE. And that's, I think, unfortunate, because we are seeing incredibly impressive mobilization. We are seeing dedication across the board. This isn't to say that this is a fault or the responsibility of anyone or a particular group, but it's not producing results, not the results that we need. And I really want us to have a future and future disputes where we benefit from having the same consensus and the same agreement and the same time to prepare and build that there has been in FE. This is not to say that we won't do everything to support every branch still in dispute, throw everything at whatever comes next, because those branches are fighting on behalf of everyone. Those branches are choosing to go forward. But I think it's important for me to say to you as NEC members, I think particularly because we do now have this contrast with FE, what I think would be best and what I hope that we can move towards, because I think it would really allow us to light a spark, I think, under all of the effort and energy, and send this really somewhere else. I'm probably not going to say much more about HE, because I'm sure there'll be questions, and I know during the last NEC it dominated, so I will move on. What I do just want to say, and I think it's important to praise, is we have had some incredibly generous donations from our sister unions. There's two I want to flag in particular. One is the RMT, who gave £5,000, which is actually significantly more than a lot of other unions give. But specifically, their General Secretary also outlined to me that he would be directly requisitioning money from every RMT local branch to donate to our UCU National Fund. And that is incredibly significant. Many of our own branches, for various different reasons, don't donate to the National Fund. So for the GS of another union to tell his branches that they are, I was very grateful to their General Secretary. And I also wanted to draw attention to, again, a very generous donation from a very small union at the University of Toronto, who have only insecure part-time members. I haven't been able to figure out if they've got 9,500 or 11,500, but they're small. And I think it really shows that this is inspiring other workers. And again, we've had tremendously generous donations from our own members. We've had as much as £10,000 in individual donations from some of our own members. It's systematically, time and time again, it's our own members that have been the most generous. From 2.23 onwards, there's a vast information about various HE local disputes. I could go into a lot of detail. There's two that I want to draw people's attention to. One is Staffordshire, not dissimilar to what I was saying about Richmond College. I think this is a key dispute for us to highlight in HE. It is the university attempting to push through plans to employ new academic staff through a wholly owned subsidiary company on worse terms and conditions, and specifically including no access to TPS. They managed to do this several years ago with Unison and with academic related staff, and brought in essentially a two-tier workforce. I visited their picket line. Their dispute is still open. This is, if Staffordshire get away with this, this will be something that other universities will try. So again, I want to flag this to NEC members as an incredibly important dispute for us to ensure we are, again, throwing the kitchen sink at. There are other disputes in HE, which I am more than happy to go into in questions, but I think if I went into all of them in this report, we would be here all afternoon. But please do ask any questions, and I think we all want to send solidarity to the FE and the HE branches in dispute, and also the ones that are winning, such as Sheffield College, which I think a new branch have made amazing gains, and we should all be really proud of them. So if we move on to section 3, a political overview, number 3.1, I think, again, I just want to really draw people's attention to this, because it is a piece of work that we're going to seek to replicate, albeit with different content in FE. So basically in late March, we published a report, UK Higher Education, a Workforce in Crisis. This was based on a very kind of quick survey we did of nearly 7,000 university staff, over 100 institutions. I was expecting the results to be bad, but I have to say they surprised even me. It revealed a worrying decline of morale in the sector, and it was, specifically related to worsening pay, pensions, and working conditions. The top line is 2/3 of respondents considering leaving the sector in the next 5 years. That went up to over 80% for the youngest age groups, and over 88%, I think it was, expressed having no confidence, or optimism was the word, sorry, no optimism in the future of higher education. Really shocking stuff. We have demanded all manner of things from the government in response to that. We've had support from the Labour front bench. But as I say, I think one of the things that the team that conducted this piece of work are doing now is laying the groundwork to run a similar type of survey to generate relevant data for FE and for our FE ballot that will be taking place. So there'll be more details of that to FEC in due course, and NEC thereafter. After that really is just a few things that we've been doing, either with regard to student loans in the IFS, or interviews that I've been given to sort of spread the word in Westminster about our disputes. Work around health and safety continues. As you know, there's been significant changes to UK-wide public health policy with the removal of COVID-19 legislation and guidance for workers. The most significant being the access to universal free testing, and also the requirement to self-isolate being removed following a positive test, which is one of the reasons we're living through, I think, increased instances of COVID at the minute. Obviously, UCU's written to the Secretary of State and the HSE. We've written to the AOC and UCIA suggesting a joint approach to manage these ongoing risks. And specifically in Scotland, we've written to Alistair Jack and Jamie Hepburn, and in Wales, the First Minister and other officials. you probably will have seen, but for those of you who haven't, that the General Secretary of the TUC is retiring. And I think it will be appropriate for me to put on record UCU's thanks to Frances for all of her support. The TUC have been very supportive of our disputes, not just most recently, but for a long time now. And there's a whole bunch of information in 3.9 and 3.10 about our Disabled Workers Conference and the Women's Conference of the TUC. I just want to flag in 3.9, we are incredibly happy because our composite motion won the vote and will now go through to TUC Congress to be debated there. It's the first year that UCU Disabled Members Conference motion has gone through to TUC. So well done to everyone who was there. Well done to all the staff. I understand it was a bit of a bun fight, but we got there. And Tamisa has been elected to stand for that committee. Also, just want to say well done to Joanna de Groot and the women's delegation to the TUC Women's Conference as well. We submitted 2 motions there, and you know, I think it's great that we are representing on key issues, not just for our union, but for the movement in those spaces. And just very quickly, there's been a whole load of action really that's covered in the rest of section 3. For those of you who don't know already, get yourself down to Tolpuddle and get yourself up to the Durham Miners Gala. And on the 18th of June, Parliament Square, we're joining our sister unions in the education block of the TUC Enough is Enough, We Demand More demo. Obviously, we've had UCU Scotland, where a whole number, not least of all, Lena, our Scottish president, and Vicky, as our national president, were speaking, and the STUC. So yeah, section 3, I think I'm not going to go into it all because there's lots. And the only thing I want to just draw people's attention to is 3.17, which is the continuation of this saga in Northern Ireland about the whistleblowing that we've been involved in about our concerns there. But I'm not going to go into that, but I think it's worth everybody reading and making themselves aware of. Just finally, in terms of international work, the president, I believe, will be taking an important journey to countries that border Ukraine next week, I think it is, Vicky. And I think that's incredibly positive that we've got someone on that delegation. We obviously took part in demonstrations with other trade unions, and the feedback that we're getting from our members is that they really appreciate seeing UCU being one of the many unions taking a strong stand about what is happening, but also stressing that, you know, there is going to be a time when unions are going to be involved in trying to help build peace, and really amplifying the voices of teachers and educators and aligned professionals in Ukraine, where teaching has continued online. You know, many people still hoping to continue and finish their degrees, which is, I think, really quite emotional and moving, but also some of the really brave and courageous solidarity that we've seen from teachers in Russia that have been putting out statements in support of their colleagues in Ukraine. So I just wanted to note that, because I think the closer we've been getting to other trade unions and sharing those solidarity messages, the closer the horror of what is happening on the ground really hits home. I won't go into anything else on the international stuff, but you can see in 3.20 the work that's ongoing regarding Palestine, and in 3.18, again, important work around Colombia, which, as I understand, is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a trade unionist. With regards to equality, I think, you know, again, some really important work that is happening. The Equality Conference happened in March, was chaired by Victoria, and looked at not just the recommendations of the Sexual Violence Task Group report, but also how we build a positive approach to LGBT plus inclusion, tackling ableism, and getting equality issues to the top of the agenda. NEC members will see that there's a whole raft of education and training programs that are happening in September, and it's going to be really important that everybody does attend those. I think it's, for me as General Secretary, I couldn't be prouder that our union, I think, is often leading the movement and the sector on certain issues. And I just wanted to specifically to draw attention to 4.2 and the work of B. Hughes in sharing the UCU webinar entitled LGBT plus Pride and Solidarity, which really looked at promoting inclusivity and solidarity in post-school education. I'm just really happy that this is the space that we are in and where we're moving towards. We're also looking into arranging anti-Semitism training for the NEC, following a course undertaken by UCU staff last year that we found was really important, and we want to start rolling out and giving other people the opportunity to engage in. And finally, I don't know if many of you will have met Maury Mckenzie. Some of you will know her very, very well. Some of you sadly will never have met her, but she has recently retired. She has been the General Secretary's PA for 26 years and served at the AUT before, obviously, the AUT merged with NAPFI to become UCU. And I'm sure many of you will want to join me in wishing her a very, very happy and well-earned retirement. There isn't much more to update on the constitutional issue that I raised last time with regards Rule 13, only to say that the QC has received information from the union, will soon undertake drafting a terms of reference for that review. As I outlined during the last NEC, nothing will commence without that terms of reference being shared with NEC members and other relevant committees for feedback, but nothing has sort of moved any quicker on that yet. If you want to consult with what is the training and CPD that will be going forward, you can find that in section 7, but there's quite a lot going on, and obviously we want to be aiming for a mix of face-to-face and online in each region post-Congress. We're really continuing to work with delivering colleges, the work we're doing to sort of minimise the effect of devolved FE funding, the attendance of reps of course, on courses outside of devolved funding areas. So this is sort of where we're at the minute. I'm not going to go into everything in section 8, but if you want a media summary of where we are and the things that we've been doing, there's quite a lot there. I think we've had a lot of incredibly positive and extensive press coverage over the last 3 months. We have been, I think, battling for column inches and media space with many other unions, and we, I think, have done incredibly well. And just today, if people haven't seen, we are on the front of FE Weekly, the FE Week front page around our disputes and raise pay or will strike on exam day. So I just wanted to cover that as the final thing, because I know sometimes we have struggled to get FE front pages. So well done to the comms and public affairs team for that. And I'll finish there, Vicky, for questions.